for today, we're going to be showing you how to make homemade pasta sauce because $6 for one can of pasta sauce from the store is way too much. So you're going to need a large pot. Today we're going to be using a Dutch oven, but it can also be a large stew pot, a knife, and a cutting board. In terms of ingredients, you're going to need oil, whichever you have in hand. Today I believe we're using sunflower oil. You're going to use 2 onions, which will be chopped, 2 carrots. If you don't have carrots, you can also substitute peppers of any sort, and zucchini. We're also going to be using 3 to 4 chopped celery stalks. We're going to be using our frozen celery today. And we're also going to be using garlic, lots of it, because who doesn't love garlic? But you can use however many cloves of garlic you like. We're also going to be using our homemade Italian blend for spices. However, whichever Italian blend you have on hand is fantastic. We'll also show you how to make Italian blend by hand in a later video if you'd like to see that. We'll also be using salt and pepper to taste. You also need diced tomato. We'll be using 3 cans today. However, if you're using fresh tomatoes, it's about 10 cups worth of diced tomato. We'll be using 1 can of tomato paste. And today we'll also be adding an optional sun-dried tomato. This is homemade, dehydrated from some extra tomatoes that we had, but it's entirely optional, so if you don't have this, no worries. The good thing about making your own pasta sauce at home is that you can use whatever vegetables, for the most part, that you have in your fridge that might be, maybe they're a little bit soft, but they're not quite off yet. So we've also put things like zucchinis and mushrooms and eggplant in our pasta sauces in the past, just to bulk it up a little bit more, because maybe we don't have carrots on hand. It all tastes amazing regardless. This recipe will make about 4 quarts worth of pasta sauce. Always be sure to wash your vegetables before you cut them, because you never really know where they've been. So we're going to start with the oil, enough to saute, so nicely coat the bottom of your pan. And now we're going to chop the onions. And a handy trick, if you don't already know, is to use a bowl on the counter for all your scraps while you're cutting your vegetables.
It doesn't have to be a fine cut, just enough to dice it smaller. Workplace hazard.
Crying because of the onions. Wash your vegetables.
I find cutting them into smaller bits makes it easier to work with later on.
And also, we didn't peel the carrots just because these carrots are very clean and you can eat the skin of carrots.
And we're just using frozen celery. We had extra that were sitting in the fridge, so we froze it for later use.
And yes, this is way more than 3 to 4 stalks of celery, but it's already a little bit defrosted, so we've decided to just use it all up. Better than going bad. And look at it also. Look at those colors. You have some lovely green, some orange, and some crystal clear white there.
So you just want to saute this on a medium. And you're going to be sauteing it until the onions are clear. One, two, three, 4, 5, and 6 is what we use.
But we also love garlic, so you don't need to use this much. And if you don't have fresh garlic, feel free to use garlic powder to taste.
So right now we're just prepping the garlic for when it's ready to go into the would-be sauce.
Right now it is still simmering on a medium heat, so we have it at 5.
Of course, crush the garlic to make the peel come off much easier. Cut off the root end of the garlic so that you don't end up getting that in the sauce and leaving hard bits where you don't want it. Now that we have the garlic prepped, it's ready to go to get minced into the would-be sauce. When it's ready, it's still sauteing. It's still early on, so it'll still be a little while. We will be using a garlic mincer. If you don't have one, you can also do a fine dice on these, as fine as you can get it, and then toss it into the sauce. It'll be just as good. The mincer just makes it a lot easier.
So we're just working on sauteing this a little bit more. This isn't necessarily timed. What we're aiming for is translucent onions. So see, they're very solid looking at the moment. We need to make them a little bit glassy. There's some smaller pieces that are almost there, but these larger chunks definitely need more time. And stir occasionally as it's sauteing, just to make sure that things don't get stuck to the bottom. So, in terms of cost, at the very beginning of this video, we did mention that pasta sauce in store is quite costly. We did some quick numbers, and in terms of volume, today we'll be making about 4 quarts. What you can get in store is about a jar for $6. And for all the ingredients that we're using today, it's about $6 to $8, but we'll be making 4 jars worth. You spend maybe an extra $1 or $2, but you get 4 jars instead of the 1 from the store. So at this point, the onions are pretty translucent, especially the top ones there. It doesn't need to be perfect. As long as most of them are getting translucent, we're good to go, because this is going to cook for a very long time. And now that the sauce base is ready, if you wanted to add anything extra like zucchini, eggplant, peppers, mushrooms, this would be the point where you add those extra vegetables. In this case, we will be adding a little bit of our homemade sun-dried tomatoes, which are just dehydrated tomatoes in oil and Italian seasoning. So this is entirely to taste. And now the next thing in the base recipe is to add your garlic. Again, we have a mincer, but if you don't, you can just chop it as finely as you can manage by hand and then toss it in. And it is going to get a little bit messy, but that's okay. The goal here is tasty, not perfect. We're also going to add some seasoning. So in this case, it's the Italian blend that we mentioned before. Just going to mix that all in, and the garlic is going to start smelling delicious. So this is 2 tablespoons of Italian blend. And this is the part where the cooking gets extra tasty because it starts to smell really good. So the goal here is we're mixing in all the aromatics. We're going to cook it until it's fragrant, which we're at that point now, I believe. Whoops. Rogue pot. And now we're going to be adding our canned tomato. And again, if you have fresh, that's about 10 cups of fresh tomato. So that's our first can, second can, and our third and final can of tomatoes. And these are diced tomatoes. They're unseasoned because we have our seasoning in there. And last but certainly not least is our tomato paste can. This is going to add a depth of flavor to the tomato. It will also thicken it. Do your best to get as much of it out as you can. And now we mix it all up. But as you can see, this has made quite a bit of sauce. So here's how we're stretching our dollar. So now we're doing salt and pepper to taste. So this is truly to taste, whatever you like. We're doing 1 teaspoon of salt. And a half, I believe. So, yes, a half. Don't mind that, that's our cat in the background. She's probably looking for attention. And now that this is simmering, which it does need to simmer for quite a while, I will take the opportunity to tidy up a little bit. We'll show you how to deal with recycling cans.
One thing I like to do is rinse out the empty cans so that when it goes to any recycling plant, it's not gross, disgusting, and dirty. Last thing you want to do is give somebody who's just trying to make $1 sick with mold. Another thing I like to do is when I have an empty can, I push that in and close the can. Too often people in recycling plants will cut themselves on lids. I've even done that myself. Or even animals will get their heads stuck in the cans. So just by bending in the lid and closing the can will prevent anybody from injuring themselves, as well as helping animals not get stuck.
And now they're ready for recycling.
So now we're going to let this simmer for 6 hours. So we're going to turn this down to about a 3. We want it to have a little bit of a bubble, but not boiling. We're also going to cover the sauce. This is going to keep in the moisture so that it's not super dry when it's ready to can. And when it is canned, it's going to be much easier to get out of the jar.
All right, so this does need to simmer for about 6 hours. And you can definitely do whatever else you need to do while this is simmering. However, the one thing we do recommend is coming every 15-20 minutes or so, just to give it a light stir, make sure nothing gets stuck to the bottom. Because if you do leave it alone for too long, it does run the risk of burning a little bit, which we have done in the past. It's not the worst thing ever. It adds maybe a little bit of a smoky flavor, but ideally there's no burnt bits at the bottom. Just a quick stir like that. Set your spatula to the side and then cover it again. And then go on your merry way doing whatever else you need to do that day.
Starting to smell delicious already.
And it's also bubbling as it's simmering, so all the flavors are starting to meld together. Just want to make sure it's not burning at the bottom though. That's the key point here. Okay, so this is what it should look like after about 6 hours. So you can see all the lines of how it condensed down. And it's quite thick and got a lot of chunks to it. So what we like to do is blend it down a little bit just for consistency. You can leave it this way if you like, or you could even potentially use a potato masher to make the chunks smaller. So we've got our hand blender here. It's quite hot, so be careful, don't hurt yourself, but fully immerse it. And let's lower it down to a 1. And this is also a great time, oops, well I guess that unplugged for me, but now is also a great time to test for flavor. If you need to readjust anything, take a little spoonful and adjust spices as needed.
And as you can see, after the blending, it's much more the consistency of a store-bought sauce as opposed to a chunky sauce.
Yeah. We didn't smooth it out entirely because we do like it a little chunky. You can see there's a carrot down there, but yeah, taste test and see if you like it. Yeah, I'd say that's great. And of course, as you use this as a pasta sauce or a pizza sauce, wherever you'd normally use tomato sauce, You can adjust the seasonings for the dish that you like.
So we just finished cleaning and sanitizing all our jars and all our lids. So now we're going to move the sauce over to the jars. We may get more than 4 quarts, and we may get a little bit less, but yeah, we just might have to wash a few more jars, that's all. Also, side note, you do want to sanitize as best as you can, just so that there's no bad bacteria in the jars while you're storing them, so they don't go off while in storage.
Yeah, especially since we've invested a decent amount of money into this, we want to do everything that we can to prevent it from going bad. And as you can see, there is a variance. So we said about 4 quarts, and we've actually got a little bit more than that. So Dylan is just cleaning a smaller jar so that we can fit that in there. The variance happens because of steam and how much it condenses. So basically how much is boiled off or how much isn't boiled off will equate to how much you may or may not get. But it's at least 4 quarts, sometimes more. So about 4 quarts and 3/4 of a pint jar. So quite a bit for about $6 to $8 worth of produce.
Yep.
And now all that's left to do for this video is to put the lids on. So some of you will notice these are canning lids. We'll go over that in a different video.
So these should be good to store in the fridge for probably about 3 weeks. If they were canned, obviously they are going to last a lot longer. But as Marina said, we'll go over canning in another video.
And there we have it. If you're ever in a situation where you've made something and you have not quite a full can, but you do want to water bath can it, the batch that you've made, you can can these ones that are more full. You can can these ones that are more full, but don't can the one that isn't entirely full. You can stick that one in the fridge and just make sure that you use that one first. Cheers to good food and good company.